Peace and blessings, family, and welcome to Labors of Love podcast. We are here to inspire, uplift, and enlighten. Each episode, we will be hearing from Black midwives, doulas, and other traditional childbirth supporters who have dedicated their lives to being of service to Black mothers and families in all aspects of the motherhood journey. Peace and blessings, family. My name is Hafeeza Ture, and welcome to another episode of Labors of Love podcast. I have the honor and privilege of having on the show with me Alia Barnes. She is a doula and a childbirth educator and the founder of Mother Plus Earth Doula Services.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we were just talking about how this week is on the calendar as
Black Maternal Health Week from April 11th through April 17th.
Yes.
So more so than ever, it's important to raise awareness about the maternal mortality rate in America.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm just grateful to have, people such as yourself to come on the platform and really continue the conversation and really engage people in this dialogue around why it is so important for us to understand, for us to know our options, for us to know who's out there to support us. So I definitely want to jump in and share with the audience, a little bit about yourself and what brought you to this space of wanting to support mothers.
Sure, absolutely. So first off, my name is Alia Barnes. I am from Stockton, California, which is one of the most diverse cities in the United States of America. Mm-hmm. It's also known for a couple of other things that aren't always so positive, but myself and a group of people are trying to change the landscape in our community. And so that's one of the reasons why I got into birth work. I trained as a doula in 2020 during COVID. I had some spare time on my hands, just like pretty much everybody else did. I've always known that I wanted to get into birth work. My great-great-grandmother was a midwife and a medicine woman in Louisiana. My great-grandmother was a labor and delivery nurse at one of the hospitals here in town. My grandmother was also a labor and delivery nurse at one of the hospitals here in town. So the women in my family have been in birth work for a long time. It's been something that has always been on my heart. And when I finally had the opportunity to join this community in some type of way, I definitely kind of hopped on it. So I completed my first intro to birth training back in February, kind of right before everything hit. I come from a healthcare background. So I've actually spent the last 10 years working in either the OR as a scrub tech or as an anesthesia assistant in pediatrics. So I come from a kind of a medical mindset, kind of a healthcare background. So knowing that there are biases in place, again, coming from a healthcare background, having an understanding of the overutilization of medications, especially in the birth space, just kind of being able to combine all of these things that I have knowledge about, that I'm passionate about. They all just kind of came together at the right place and the right time in my life. So that's kind of a little bit about myself and why I got into birth work. And then more particularly, one thing that I'm incredibly passionate about is, of course, the maternal mortality rate in the United States. Once I found out that Black birthing people were at least four times more likely to die during childbirth. Some areas have higher rates than that. Like in New Jersey, it's 12 times higher rate.
It's just heart-wrenching, just to hear that.
It's heavy. It's heavy stuff. And I found that I hear these numbers a lot, and I heard those numbers a lot last summer. And I was like, okay, but what am I actually doing to make a difference in those numbers? And so that was part of the reason why I was like, okay, I'm doing this doula thing kind of full steam ahead now. Yeah. So that's a little bit about me and kind of why I got into this work.
That is awesome. And it still resonates with kind of even the passion behind this project. It's like, we do have that understanding, right? And especially if you're in those communities where we're talking about birth and birth work, that comes up a lot. And I know for those who aren't aware of all aspects of it, especially young women or young people who are considering having children, just not really having the balance, right, of stories.
Right.
And sometimes we are bombarded with statistics, and a lot of it comes from a place of fear. So, part of the purpose and even having this platform is to begin the dialogue, to have these conversations, to hear from resources that, are knowledgeable and because I found that in my situation, when I became pregnant and started having children, it was that information and education that empowered me, right?
Yes.
To make choices and decisions. So it's like, okay, well, if this information is here and we can make those connections as to the people who may look like you that you can come to for support.
Exactly.
Not in this alone. So to hear those stories, but I think it's phenomenal. And one thing you talked about is, coming into this around COVID, but it seems like birth was around you for generations. So like
exactly.
Even prior to you coming earthside, this whole energy of, so how was that growing up? Do you remember or recall things that were just kind of normal, that were a part of your family of origin?
So I actually was born with the help of a doula. So it starts from inception, right. Like literally, right? So my mother knew that she didn't want a lot of interventions in her birth. And this is back in the late 80s. So she was kind of ahead of her time then. She knew she didn't want to be induced. She knew she didn't want an epidural. She knew she didn't want a C-section. So she was aware of all of these things. And so she, like I said, she had a doula. I think back then it was called a labor coach.
Nice. Nice, fancy.
But she had Rhonda, okay?
Okay.
And part of it too is I'm a military brat. My dad was in the Navy, and my dad wasn't present for my birth. So the military still does this now. They offer labor support to birthing military families.
That is awesome.
Yeah. So my mom benefited from that program. She, like I said, she had a doula. And then again, like I mentioned, most of the women in my family work in healthcare and specifically as birth workers. So just the idea, home births were pretty normal in my mind growing up. I've had family members who have had home births. Some were planned and some were not. Just some precipitous labor is kind of common in the women in my family. Like they just go. So just kind of, that's always been somewhat normal in my mind, and I've always kind of known that when it was my turn to have kids, whenever that happens for me, I would want a low intervention birth. Right. So yeah, it's just, so birth has been normalized in my family. A lot of things have been normalized in my family that are starting to come back more trendy now, right? So I was a cloth diaper baby.
My children were too, yes.
Yeah. My children will be cloth diaper babies.
Very nice.
I was breastfed, for as long as, I think probably for a while.
Okay.
And my great grandmother, who was a labor and delivery nurse, she took care of me pretty much all growing up. So I never went to like daycare or preschool or anything like that. It was the women in my family that were truly a village around raising the children in my family. Yeah. So I'm really grateful for that model of upbringing that I came into. A multi-generational household is what I lived in. So that was something that I encourage. I love it. Like I would want the same for my family whenever that's time. And my great grandmother made my baby food for me. So like, like a lot of things that like I grew up with as like the norm and they're starting to come back now. And these are all things that like I always knew, like, well, yeah, that makes sense. Like, why wouldn't you just puree the vegetables that you're already going to be feeding yourself?
Exactly. And now they make it like, it's so trendy that you can buy like the equipment in the
yes.
Back in the day, we were using ice cream, like the ice trays.
Yes.
And the Vitamix, and you scoop it and you freeze the cubes. Now you got the little packaging and the compartments and the this and that.
No, it wasn't like that. My great grandma would buy the little tiny mason jars and we would just And she would make like, it was a lot of sweet potatoes. It was a lot of peas, and she gardened. She had a garden for all of these.
That's even so farm to like that is.
So back in the late 80s, early 90s.
That is so valuable. Oh my goodness. But to have such a foundation is, it's phenomenal. And to, like you said, the multi-generational, to have someone caring for your children that
that you trust implicitly.
Oh my gosh. There is something, and for your mom, I'm sure that was something that was so, brought her so much peace.
Well, she was a single mom at some point, right? So my parents got a divorce when I was pretty young. She was a single mom, so she had to work, right? Wow. So having my great grandmother, let me think. When I was 6, my great grandma was 83. So, and she lived to be 97. So I had her for a very long time.
And all of that wisdom, that is beautiful.
Yeah. So that's kind of who I try to embody, and that's kind of who that's like some people have different role models. Mine is Lily Mae Martin, so that's the kind of path that I'm trying to walk. So
that's your grandmother's name, great grandmother.
Yes,
very nice, very nice. There's one thing that you mentioned that I don't know if the audience is may be familiar with, just the term about low intervention or no intervention birth, because I think when we think of, I know for me, before having my birth experiences, when I thought of birth, it always was the idea of in a hospital, and you see the women in the stirrups, and like I wanted my epidural now. Like there was like this whole language, and before I even understood what interventions were, or that there was another option as to what birth looked like, that didn't seem foreign. So what would it mean, or what did that look like to have no intervention or low intervention?
So I like to pretend that the hospital is a restaurant. Okay. And we have a menu. Okay. Now the menu has a lot of different things on it. And of course, when you go to a restaurant, the waiter or the waitress is going to push the most expensive item on the menu on you. So that would be the filet mignon. So for me, that would be the cesarean section. Okay. That would be the highest level of intervention when it comes to birth in the hospital setting. Below that, I would say would be like your roast chicken, which would be the epidural. Okay. Below that, you can get like a side salad, which maybe we'll call that the like some IV pain medication. Okay. Or maybe that's like one of those like side dishes, like one of those like some mashed potatoes or something. Okay. That would be the IV pain medication. So they can give you medicine through your IV, like where they put, but not the epidural, right? So those are two separate things. And then further down, like on the appetizer special would be like your nitrous oxide or your let's see, sterile water injections. Okay. So when you go to the restaurant, does the restaurant make money if you just sit and drink the water?
Right.
So low intervention birth would be just sitting and drinking the water. Okay. So that's just no IV pain medications. That's no nitrous oxide. That's no epidural. That's no vacuum and forceps. That's no episiotomy. That's no induction. So to me, when I say low intervention or no intervention, that's kind of what I mean is it's just the body's normal physiological process of getting a baby from inside to outside.
Right.
Allowing when a low intervention or no intervention birth is allowing the body to bring the baby earthside on its own without any help from medicine, without any help from any interventions that they would give to you at the hospital. One of the common things is inductions, is kind of one of the most common interventions that happen at the hospital. And then once you start an induction, you get what's called, or what we like to call in the birth world as the cascade of interventions. So it's kind of like once you order one thing on the menu, the body starts needing other things to eat as well.
Right.
Or the staff starts pushing other things on you as well, or things don't progress as they normally would, and you start requiring other things on the menu.
Right. And I think that's like a very clear way of visualizing what that looks like. Because like you said, as far as the whole, once you get started with the interventions, that whole cascade, and even understanding why those interventions might be looked at as being necessary in the first place, without the body's ability to relax and the natural progression of, labor, then we justify it as it making sense, when I know there's statistics in place that show that when women such as yourself are in the space supporting other women or mothers or humans birthing, you feel supported, right? Yes. So you're not tense, you're not concerned about the environment around you, whether it's a safe space, whether you're capable, so how much that plays a role. And I know as a doula and as a childbirth educator, what are some of those, what's some of that information and the support given so that in any environment, the mother feels that she can achieve a healthy birth?
Sure. So first and foremost, my biggest thing, my number one thing is providing education and information. Mm-hmm. Okay. I think there is a level of confidence that happens when you have an understanding of what is going to be put in front of you.
Right.
Okay. Now, you cannot schedule your labor as to how it's going to go. It doesn't work like that. Mm-hmm. But if you have prepared for the scenarios that could come into place, you are so much better off for it. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of one of the main things that I focus on as a doula, is kind of like, okay, let's talk about episiotomies. Okay. Mm-hmm. They're a thing that happen. Do you know that you don't want one? Okay, great. Here's how we'll approach that. Yeah. You're going to bring it up to your provider beforehand. Mm-hmm. That, hey, I heard about this thing called an episiotomy. Do you do them on your patients? Right. There's a way to approach each intervention with your provider to create kind of a mutual understanding, mm-hmm. and to kind of create a rapport with the provider. So I like to think myself as a doula as like the coach, right? I want my players to succeed. I want them to do as well as possible, but I can't run out on the court for them. At least I shouldn't have to. Trust me, I will. But that should be the last resort, right? So I want to make sure that the partners are well-versed in all of the interventions, all of the medications, because it's great for the birthing person to have an understanding and to be prepared and everything. But when you're in labor,
it's a whole different ballgame. Yeah.
You're not supposed to be thinking. Mm-mm. Did you know that thinking actually stalls labor?
I can imagine, because you're in your head as opposed to in your body feeling the contractions and allowing to move the way it needs to move.
There was a study amongst mice about this, and it slowed down thinking or being distracted in labor, slowed down labor by 70%.
Oh my gosh. That is
in mice, but generally what's true for mice is true for people.
We're mammals. Like, wow. So you don't want the birthing person to have to be thinking. So any kind of decisions that need to be made surrounding birth need to be made by the partner. Yes, the advocate that's in place. And that's what I find so like disheartening, when you're telling me in the middle of a contraction, somebody's asking you to make a decision about an intervention. And then like, how much stress does that bring on the fact that like, you're telling me something's elevated or something happened here?
Like you're telling me that something's wrong with my baby?
Right. It is. And like, if you don't do this, then this could happen.
It's really? That part. It's that part. So when I work with the families, I make sure the partner knows kind of my verbiage of asking the staff, hey, do we have to be doing this right now?
Thank you.
Or, hey, no, thank you.
Yeah.
Or, hey, I understand that this is your recommendation right now. I don't understand it. Can you stop and explain this to me and my partner a little bit better as to why this is necessary? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I also do want to empower the partners to elevate it a level if they have to, right? I tell them, like, you can, as soon as you mention the word ethics review in the hospital, people get real nice to you.
Okay. Right. And just even like what you're like referring to, as far as we always look at doctors or the medical staff as the authority on, whatever the situation is, but understanding birth is not a medical procedure. Birth is not something that needs to be intervened. Like, this is something natural that happens with your body. So you are authority in this.
Correct.
So it's just, it really is, it's mind-blowing, but that's why I feel like it's so important to have these conversations in this dialogue, because it really should be a normal conversation. And I know, unfortunately for me, even though I did have, my mother was very, like, breastfeeding was something that was talked about, but she was a nurse. So there was certain things that I knew about, but again, in my mind, all my mom's children were hospital births. She had C-sections. So those things didn't seem foreign to me. And it wasn't until I became pregnant myself, like all throughout, growing up, young adulthood, my first child was at 25. So all of this information I wasn't privy to until I started digging deeper into myself. And then it's like, somebody brought to my children's father brought to my attention, like, we don't have to have birth in a hospital. And I'm like, really? So I got, like, what does that look like? So now I'm looking at birth centers and,
you can say no to anything.
But again, these are things that it is just not common knowledge. Like, there's this idea that whatever they say goes, and like, this is what happens. This is how you do it. And, you come to your OB appointments, and then we're going to schedule, you could schedule,
it blows my mind how birth is treated here in the States compared to how it's treated in other countries.
And that's something that needs to be brought to light. Like, those experiences, what are other women in other countries, what are they experiencing in their birthing process? Like, what is normal?
It's very interesting to me that in Canada and the United Kingdom, home birth is very normal and it's very well integrated into their insurance system.
Key, the insurance is covering it.
So here's the thing, though, too, what people don't know is insurance will cover home birth.
Here in the States.
Here in the States.
Okay.
Insurance will cover home birth here in the States. Now, it depends on your state, because in some states, home birth is flat out illegal.
Whoa. Do you know what states offhand or any?
Nebraska is one of them.
Are you serious?
I know that off the top of, I have a virtual doula client in Nebraska. And it's illegal there. She said that someone from South Dakota will come over the border and do it, like, illegally.
Under the table.
Under the table. And I'm just like, wow, under the table home birth, because it's illegal in that state. Different states have different restrictions on what type. There's different types of midwives. So there's that.
Okay.
So there's different types. Different states will have different restrictions on the types of midwives that can perform home births. So in Alabama, for example, a certified nurse midwife who is certified to provide midwifery care in the hospital cannot be a midwife for a home birth or a birth center birth.
So you have to be licensed, or because you
have to have a different type of midwifery license, which is this is strictly one of those stupid law things to keep Black birthing people from Black midwifery care.
Yes, and the options, and
it's to keep hospital birth as the norm, because the insurance company makes money off of hospital birth. The insurance company doesn't make money off of home birth, because it's, again, there's not a lot of items being ordered on the menu.
It's like having the water, like
having the water.
And then what they said, C-sections are on, because it's major surgery.
$70,000. But I mean, your insurance, like, depending on your insurance plan, like, you might only have to pay like $2,000, $3,000. Like, but again, it depends on your insurance,
right?
On what your copays are.
That is, oh my god.
But an unmedicated low intervention birth at the hospital is going to be like $4,000 versus the cesarean birth with with the fillet, with everything before it, because you end up getting everything before it too.
Exactly, because it's never you just go straight there. You're gonna
you don't go straight from nothing to C-section, right?
Pain, so you need something for that. It is just, and just to look at the model again, coming from a perspective, the Western perspective of it's like a pre-existing condition, almost like to come to the hospital or come to your provider pregnant.
It's a natural physiological process. Our body is literally designed to do this.
Perfectly designed to do this, and given the right environment, we are the only mammals.
Oh, I mean, I could really this. I'm incredibly introverted, but once you get started me talking about birth, like forget it. I am talking about it forever because there's so many little nuanced things that go into why it looks the way it does in this country that again, I could talk about it forever.
Right. And again, and it's not, and what I try to stay away from, because I am very much an advocate of unmedicated, home births and, out of hospital settings and, just that whole empowerment, breastfeeding, like cloth diapering, vegan, all of these things. But I never want to make it seem like there's one right way to do something.
There is absolutely not one right way to have birth. Here's my thing. I'm the kind of doula where if you walk in there telling me you want an epidural, I'm going to be the first person with my hand up looking for the anesthesiologist to get you that epidural. If that's what you want and that's what you want going into your birth, we're going to make it happen. I have no qualms about that. What I do have a problem with is when someone tells me they want to have an unmedicated vaginal birth and they get pushed all these other things on them.
Right. That's the key right there. And it's about options. It's about knowing your choices and having these conversations so that maybe there is something that you didn't know, or, you want to find out more about, or, some things that we've normalized that really don't have to be. And this whole fear around birthing and the fear around the pain and fear around all of these things, that it really is something that we are naturally designed to do. And
that's what I always tell all the people. Yes.
It does not have to be something that needs to be intervened. And for me, that's why I am an advocate for home birth in the sense when you are comfortable and confident with the choice that you made, that you know that you are capable and you are in your ideal setting to do so.
Absolutely.
Perfect. But if a hospital is where you find your comfort, and you know, if that's the environment that's going to bring you peace so that you can allow your body, then that's what's for you. But just understanding how it works. And that's why I think that whole education, that you're providing and the support that you're providing is just so valuable, because then you can make those choices and decisions from a true place of understanding. That it's phenomenal.
Yeah. If you don't know all of your options, how can you make the best choice for you and your birth and your body and your baby?
Exactly. We have a guest commenting, yes, as far as I think this is about VBAC, that if you the cesarean section and now you want to have a different experience, it does sometimes seem like it's not supported. And unfortunately, whatever is most convenient for the doctor is what takes precedence over the experience of the mother and the family.
So here's my number one piece of advice. I don't care if you're a birthing person or not. This is for anybody, anytime, anything. If you do not feel supported by your care provider, you fire them. You find another one, because you are paying them. If they do not support you, if they are not listening to you, if they're not understanding you, this goes for your primary care doctor, this goes for your therapist, this goes for your psychiatrist, this goes for anybody and everybody. If they are your care provider and you are paying them and they are not supporting you in a way that you need to be supported, time for the next one. Because there will be somebody that can support you. You just have to do the work and advocate for yourself and find them.
That is so, I thank you for saying that. And like, there should be an interview process and there should be like chemistry there, right? Like, would you date somebody that you're not really doing? Like,
that's the thing is birth is a really big deal, and it's not always treated as such here. And I always try to, you know how like weddings are a really big deal here in America? Mm-hmm. What if we treated births the same way we treated weddings? How many venues do you look at? Do you get a wedding planner? How much money do you spend? How much time do you spend planning it?
Mm.
And you have your birth experience with you forever. That marriage might not last forever. You're going to have that kid forever.
Against that, yeah. So, yes, absolutely. It is a very transitional experience. So we want to have those folks on board who resonate. And it's so funny, Alia, like when we got on, I was like, we're going to just allow this to go. So we're already at the top of the hour and I still have questions.
Let's go. Let's do it. I'm here. Let's get these questions. I'm so here for it. Like I said, this is something that I'm incredibly passionate about, right? So when you're passionate about it,
all day,
any day.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. So what do you say to people who are concerned about birthing during a pandemic?
So I only know how to be a doula during the pandemic.
And that's true because you said last February. So this is
it. I only know how to provide labor support in a pandemic. So my model of care has always been with COVID in mind.
Wow.
So I've always kind of had this hybrid model of care for my in-person clients that I take on. I try to do the first couple of sessions that I have with them via Zoom. Okay. And then I usually meet with them